Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Radha Tava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Hare Gokula Nandana Hare Jaya Radha Gokula Nandana Gokula Nandana Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani. Hare Krishna. So we're reading from Canto 2, Chapter 8, verse 25. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. Verse 25. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshthi yatatmabhu. Apare chanutishtanti. Purvesham purvajay kritam. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshthi yatatmabhu. Apare chanutishtanti. Purvesham purvajay kritam. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshthi yathatmabhu. Apare chanutishtanti. Purvesham purvajay kritam. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshthi yathatmabhu. Apare chanutishtanti. Purvesham purvajay kritam. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshthi yathatmabhu. Apare chanutishtanti. Purvesham purvajay kritam. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshthi yathatmabhu. Apare chanutishtanti. Purvesham purvajay kritam. Mataji's. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshthi yathatmabhu. Apare chanutishtanti. Purvesham purvajay kritam. Atra pramanam hi bhavan. Parameshti yathatmabhu apare chanutishtanti purvesham purvajaya kritam. Word for word, atra, in this matter, pramanam, evidential facts, he, certainly, bhavan, yourself, parameshti, Brahma, the creator of the universe, yatha, as, atmabhuhu, born directly from the Lord, apare, others, cha, only, anutishtanti, just to follow, purvesham, as a matter of custom, purvajehe, knowledge suggested by a previous philosopher, kritam, having been done. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He Jai. Translation. O great sage, you are as good as Brahma, the original living being. Others follow custom only. Others follow custom only, as followed by the previous philosophical speculators. I'm going to repeat this. O great sage, you are as good as Brahma, the original living being. Others follow custom only, as followed by the previous philosophical speculators. Purport. It may be argued that Shukadeva Goswami is not the only authority of perfect knowledge in transcendence, because there are many other sages and their followers. Contemporary to Vyasadeva or even prior to him, there were many other great sages such as Gautama, Kanada, Jaimini, Kapila, Ashtavakra, and all of them have presented a philosophical path by themselves. Patanjali is also one of them. And all these 6 great rishis have their own way of thinking, exactly like the modern philosophers and mental speculators. The difference between the 6 philosophical paths put forward by the renowned sages above mentioned and that of Shukadeva Goswami as presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam is that all the 6 sages mentioned above speak the facts according to their own thinking. But Shukadeva Goswami presents the knowledge which comes down directly from Brahmaji, who is known as Atmabhu, or born and educated by the Almighty Personality of Godhead. Vedic transcendental knowledge descends directly from the Personality of Godhead. Vedic transcendental knowledge descends directly from the Personality of Godhead. By His mercy, Brahma, the first living being in the universe, was enlightened. And from Brahmaji, Narad was enlightened. And from Narad, Vyasa was enlightened. Shukadeva Goswami received such transcendental knowledge directly from his father Vyasadeva. Thus, the knowledge being received from the chain of disciplic succession is perfect. One cannot be a spiritual master in perfection unless and until one has received the same by disciplic succession. This is the secret of receiving transcendental knowledge. The 6 great sages mentioned above may be great thinkers, but their knowledge by mental speculation is not perfect. However perfect an empiric philosopher may be in presenting a philosophical thesis, such knowledge is never perfect because it is produced by an imperfect mind. Such great sages also have their disciplic successions, but they are not authorized because such knowledge does not come directly from the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. No one can be independent except Narayan. Therefore, No one's knowledge can be perfect, for everyone's knowledge is dependent on the flickering mind. Mind is material, and thus knowledge presented by material speculators is never transcendental and can never become perfect. Mundane philosophers, being imperfect in themselves, disagree with other philosophers because a mundane philosopher is not a philosopher at all unless he presents his own theory. Intelligent persons like Maharaj Parikshit do not recognize such mental speculators, however great they may be, but hear from the authorities like Shukadeva Goswami, who is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the Parampara system, as especially stressed in the Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasyad Deshadarane Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langahite Girim Yat Kripatam Vande Shri Gurukini Taranam. Hare Krishna. I seek blessings of all the devotees here. Maharaj, Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj is here. It's a tall order to speak. All the senior devotees, Govinda Prabhu, Adi, so every one of you probably know better than what I can speak. But I'm only going to try and repeat something that I've heard. Maybe if I can remember something. Whatever is good, that means I've heard it properly, remembered it. Whatever nonsense is mine, so please forgive me. I'll try my best. Hare Krishna. So the verse is very is focused so many times, this aspect of parampara, and being established, re-established, and again established, one after another. Scriptures, and Srila Prabhupada is stressed upon this, and all the great souls. Actually, in the first canto also, similarly, the sages, Shaunaka Adi also said something similar for Shuddha Goswami, that he's learned it directly from his spiritual master Shukadeva Goswami. But he's also learned from the other sages, the other philosophies, the 6 philosophies. So, Atta Pramanam hi bhavan parameshti yadatma bhuhu apare chanutishtanti purvesham purvaje kritam. O great sage, you are as good as Brahma, the original living being. Others follow custom only, as followed by the previous philosophical speculators. Srila Prabhupada mentions about the the six philosophers, great philosophers. This sixth philosophy, Vedic philosophy, to be honest, I've been hearing since I was a little boy, but no one knew really what it is. Nobody could explain, but everyone was very proud. We are from that place where the sixth philosophy was spoken. Nobody knows, and I never learned it myself. Not that I'm learning it now. Interestingly, Srila Prabhupada says also in one of the purport that nobody should sit on Vyasasana unless they have understood the sixth philosophy of Vedic system, which is not something I can learn, but something for School of Bhakti maybe, I don't know. What are things that we should learn? So, Krishna establishes this transcendental knowledge. The fourth chapter, Bhagavad Gita, Imam Vivashvate Yogam. Imam Vivashvate Yogam, Proktavan Aham Avyayam, Vivaswan Manve Praha, Manu Ikshva Kave Bravit. So, this knowledge, Lord Krishna himself gave it to the sun god Vivaswan. Vivaswan gave it to Manu, and Manu gave it to Ikshvaku, and likewise, this knowledge has been given in that order, right, straight from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the next verse itself, Krishna says, Evam Parampara Praptam, Imam Rajasya Vidu, Sa Kalena Mahata, Yogo Nashta Parantapa. This knowledge has to be received, is always given in the Parampara system. Now, Prabhupada says in the purport, one can argue that they also have some sort of Parampara. But what's the difference there? Their Parampara is based on their own mental speculation. And that's not coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is perfect, who is independent. Tene Brahma, so he says, he is Abhidna Swarat, the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Janmadhyashetu anvayat itaratascha chateshva Abhidna Swarat. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. So he is the one who gave it within the heart of Adi Kavi, Lord Brahma. And that's how, and everyone's is actually illusion. Yeah? Muhyanti yat suraya. No one else can understand unless it is received from the Lord. Actually, Brahmaji also says that praise to the Lord that somehow please, I pray to the Lord that you somehow I'm able to remember this after the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. It's very interesting actually. The Chatushloki Bhagavatam, the 4 verses, also refutes these 6 philosophies. As I was reading, I realized, if I go and relate it to that, it makes so much sense that these philosophies are actually not correct. 6 philosophy, Prabhupada says, the others are common apart from the Ashtavakra. So the 6th is Vedanta, which was presented by Vyasadeva. Prabhupada says in some of the purports, Ashtavakra, who was the 6th one, probably Vedanta does not really sit with the rest of the 5 because it actually pretty much defeats the other 5 and points out what the defects of those are. So the perfect knowledge was presented by Srila Vyasadeva after analyzing and then finding what the real faults are, and then he also presented Vedanta Sutra. From the Vedanta Sutra, the natural commentary Srimad Bhagavatam comes. So what we have received is the best of all the philosophy. So we're not really lacking anything, but it is interesting that all these philosophies also have some role in the understanding of Vedic system, and as is said by Srila Prabhupada, we should attempt at least to understand that. But it's difficult. So philosophy is very, very attractive to everyone. All sorts that all, but not to many. The philosophers are not likened by the scientists. They don't like, some time ago I was hearing about, I'm into IT, so artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, they're trying to pretty much put some logic, some mass data compilation so that it is possible for a machine to understand what a man or human should think or what they can do and what not. So it seems it all fits well. They have cracked most of it. The only troublemakers are philosophers because they think differently. For philosophy is love of wisdom. So that's information wisdom is different. what we can produce from a machine is information. What can come from a philosophy, from the sages, is wisdom. So the scientist, and actually, there's an interesting pastime about the God spot. Has anyone heard of God spot? God spot. So many years ago, I think back in 2009, I was reading it. So the scientist established, because the scientist mind is how they try to find the structure within the body, within the physiology. If someone is religious, someone is spiritual, what's the difference between that person and the person who is not? So what's the brain? What is the neurons and the neurology working there? Where the energy going from one place to the other place? So they did some samples of sages from different line of spirituality, Buddhist and Hindus and Christians, everyone. And they said that the scientists have actually found out there is a particular, a spot in the brain, some bunch of neuron, that they can see that this person is religious because there is some God spot in there. There's a God spot. Because that's how. Because the scientists are about how. They don't know why. And the philosopher would ask why. Why there is a God spot. They said, no, don't ask why. We're telling you how. There is because someone is religious because there is a God spot. And somehow or other we'll figure out and we will get rid of the God spot. And that's it. We can finish all these, stupid, sentimentalist philosophers, religionists. So the God spot. So the reporters actually, they like to do things. They want to go to the other side of it and hear from what they have to say. So they go to one of the bishops and ask, okay, do you know that there's a latest research and the scientists have found out there's a God spot and you are religious because there's a God spot. That's all. There's no difference. And someone can remove it. Someone can put it in your head. So the chips will come in probably in the future. Can become. So that was an interesting answer from the bishop. What he said is, okay, I don't know whether there is a God spot or there is no God spot. Even if there is a God spot, it's God who's put it. So it is not something that someone can do it. So this is only by the mercy of the Lord something can happen. But the scientists are hell-bent upon, proving there is no God, there is no religion, nobody has to follow anything. And the purpose of that is really what? Is they have their own philosophy. They want to fulfill the philosophy of the masses. And the masses, this philosophy in the Vedic system is also available. It's called Charvaka philosophy. It was always, that's interesting, is even at that time there was Charvaka. And there is a mention of his philosophy so many places. Charvaka had his own philosophy. It says, Yavat jivet, sukham jivet. So long you live happily. Yeah? And then says, you say that. Yavat jivet, sukham jivet. Rinam kritva, ghritam pibet. Rinam kritva means if you take a loan, borrow, steal, whatever you want to do, somehow get more ghee and drink ghee. Ghee is very nice. So in the sense, ghee is in the old days, the ghee was the sense gratification. So if you like a lot of ghee, then you can imagine why. But it is good, Ayurveda says. Okay, yeah, so he says, Rinam kritva ghitam pibet. Bhasmi bhutasya devasya, bhasmi bhutasya dehasya, yeah, punaragamam kuta. He says, this body will be eventually finished, even the ashes. Who's going to come back anyway? So just live your life, enjoy. Just do it. This is the philosophy that the modern world runs on. But our sages, and thanks to Srila Prabhupada, that we got something better than that. So the scientists, they just don't understand. And the philosophies, the mundane philosophers and the philosophy of the Vedas and the sages and coming from the Supreme Lord is obviously the highest. The philosophy is about love of wisdom, as we said. It is about the understanding, the fundamental truth behind being or existence. This is the main attempt of the philosophers to understand. And also about this six, I don't talk a lot about six philosophy. I probably get confused. But so Krishna was also taught, actually I was reading in Bhagavatam when Krishna went and Balaram went to Avanti to learn. They also learnt these 6 philosophies, apart from everything else, the 64 art and everything that they learned. And Lord Chaitanya, at the age of 10, he was an expert grammar. So this is Lord, he can do anything, but for our understanding, he was at the age of 10, he was expert in grammar, and he had mastered Nyaya. Navdeep was quite famous for the Nyaya philosophy, so very popular. And Srila Prabhupada has used Nyaya philosophy a lot. So I've got some references that I will read as we go. So what are these 6 philosophies? So it's mentioned many places. Srila Prabhupada has given some hints on what it is, and there is also some verses spoken within the Bhagavatam, and there's also a verse, many verses actually refuting the claim of the 6, apart from the Vedanta. If you say Ashtavakra was the 6th, then the other philosophy, which are atheist basically, because they don't put Supreme Lord as the primeval cause of all causes. And they have the theory that everything is created, maintained, or it can happen without the hand of, or without the full control of the Supreme Lord. So there's also Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has mentioned about this again, that we should not be lazy in understanding the Siddhanta or the philosophy. So what interesting he said is, if we don't understand the Siddhanta, we cannot get rid of the anarthas. So anartha nivritti is only possible once we have understood properly the Siddhanta, the philosophy of what we are receiving. Because actually a lot of it is very confusing. If you read through, at least I was finding it very, this is what we also believe. What's the difference? But when we read the purports of Srila Prabhupada and his disciple, then find actually how Vedanta defeats all these philosophies. So without the understanding of philosophy, we cannot get rid of the anarthas. And the way to understand, or the perfection of understanding of philosophy, Bhaktisiddhanta says that we see Krishna everywhere, in every situation. And unless we have understood that, the anartha will continue unless we have established that Krishna's presence in all situations, all times. So the 6th philosophy is, the first one is Vaisheshika, presented by, it says in the purport, I think, Kanad, presented by Kanad, one of the Rishi. And this Vaisheshika is Vishesha, actually, is quite special, unique, something like that. So Vaisheshika philosophy says that it is the atom, the smallest atom. If you can get down to the smallest atom, then you understand atom is eternal. And it also gives it that apart from all the atomic reality, atoms are real, there is also the soul and super soul. There are all sorts of, they're all like one of them. They don't actually focus much on the soul and the super soul. From their point of view, atoms can just be responsible for the creation, and that's all we need to understand by lots of deliberation on those aspects. I'll quickly go to what Vedanta Sutras says, that if atoms, so if the atom were responsible for the creation, then how do we justify this aspect of happiness and distress, karmic reaction? How can atoms by itself understand or somehow figure out and join together and create the cosmology and be responsible for the individual suffering? And how do you justify then the residual karma of a jiva from one time to the one birth to the other birth, or maybe one creation to the other creation? So that cannot happen. So that philosophy is incorrect. It is It is the Lord who takes the responsibility, and Jiva actually becomes responsible for their own actions. And so it says that the Jiva, actually I'm going to read a little bit from the purport. I don't think I can otherwise fully explain this. So according to the sutra, one cannot claim that at the time of creation, atoms first combined together because they are impelled by some karmic impulse adhering in the atoms themselves. Since atoms by themselves in the primeval state before combining into complex object have no ethical responsibility that might lead them to acquire pious and sinful reactions, nor can the initial combination of atoms be explained as a result of residual karma of living entities who lie dormant prior to creation. So the atoms are dormant really. So that philosophy does not hold. Stay with them trying. But it is interesting. Maybe it will inspire someone to read and understand. And then the Patanjali is quite popular, Ashtanga Yoga, and there are other aspects also. So Yama Niyam, Pranayam Pratyahara, Yama Niyam Asana, Pranayam Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. So Patanjali also has the aspect of God, but for the yoga system, Patanjali's yoga system, it is only one of the means of achieving your ultimate goal of liberation. All these philosophies eventually do have the goal of liberation, but just their method is incorrect because it's imperfect, not coming from the Lord. So Patanjali says also that it's just Ishvara Pranidhanad Va, means you can do all the other things, concentration and all this. You can also achieve your samadhi by surrendering unto the Lord. It is one of the options, not the main option. That's interesting. But obviously our Prabhupada in the Parampara, we understand that this is the only way is to surrender to the Lord. There's no other way. And there's an interesting fact. Lots of facts I have gathered. Some devotee was saying, I don't know, Maharaj, you've heard about this. Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. Dharana is meditation. Dharana is concentration. And Dhyan is meditation. Samadhi is trance. Some devotee was saying that if we are able to concentrate our mind for 12 seconds, we are in the dharana state. So we are chanting our rounds and then we are able to focus for 12 seconds. It is dharana. If you can do 12 times 12, then it is dhyana. And you can do 12 times 12 times 12 seconds, it becomes samadhi. So it works out about, 28 minutes if you can chant. It was working out. Then actually, I don't know if you can, do experience, like if we are chanting, it is, the mind goes everywhere. But we try to bring our mind, okay, I need to focus, bring the mind. And as we bring the mind more to hear, or just chant and hear, and get rid of all the thoughts coming in, at the initial stage, we can experience that it's like quite fickle and it gets stable a little bit. And as we go on, actually it does help in that sense. We get to the stage, but I could never get to the stage of dhyana. 12 seconds is the max, I think I could consider, but it is interesting. So so Patanjali, then Sankhya. Sankhya is also, Krishna has spoken about Sankhya, but the Sankhya of this Kapila, who is a atheist Kapila, he's got no role for God to play in the whole of the creation or the liberation. So he's completely atheist. So that's all rejected. Jiva, for the Sankhya, it is just the Prakriti, which is the responsible aspect of activity. Soul is just conscious, has nothing to do with this. Then our Vedanta Sutra is Govinda Bhashya also, it's written there. They explain that if it has to be the Jiva responsible for his choice, otherwise what's the purpose of all the scriptural injunction? Because they must be performing whatever they do for the purpose of going to the heaven or even for the purpose of liberation. It is Jiva's desire. It is not the Prakriti who has just become responsible for for everything. It has to be jiva. Then there is interesting karma mimamsa. Karma mimamsa is karma kanda basically. So there is karma mimamsa actually does not even say that there is a need for liberation. You can just perform your karma kanda, read the Vedic rituals, perform the rituals, and you get better and better life. And maximum you can do is you can become a demigod. There's nothing beyond that. So that's all karma mimamsa is. This is presented by Jaimini. Sankhya is by the Kapila. And the final is Nyaya. I was going to speak about Nyaya a little bit. Nyaya Gautam is something that I'll speak a few Nyaya philosophy that's quoted by Prabhupada. It's very interesting. But Nyaya is basically negation of illusion and happiness. So you use your logical reasoning to understand in the life, and then what's happening, the reasons, and there are many aspects of how you can arrive at a logical reasoning as to why we are suffering. So get rid of the five suffering. It says from we can dispel the false conception or the false ego by getting rid of the bad habits. And once we got rid of bad habits, then we will not entangle in the action and reaction and all that, and we can then avoid the rebirth, and then the miseries are finished. That's all it is, just understanding and working out the logical aspects. So I was going to speak a few nyayas used by Srila Prabhupada. That's interesting. Bring some light. So one of the nyayas Srila Prabhupada used in the verses, actually there are lots of them in Chaitanya Charitamrita everywhere. The Ardha Kukkuti Nyaya. Ardha Kukkuti Nyaya is like half chicken. So chicken, one person thinks that I can get chicken egg from the rear part of the chicken, but I have to feed the front side. What's the point of that? Just cut the front one so I get rid of the expense and I can only get the eggs. So you can't do that. You can't have just the earth. So that's the Ardha Kukkuti. And it is used by, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that we cannot, some, in Navadvip and many places it is said that people don't accept the authority of Nityananda Prabhu. They just think that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is all that we need. But that's like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, only accepting half of the facts, not the full fact. That is the other Kukkuti. And also very famous is Kupa Manduka, like the Mr. Frog in the well. That's used by Srila Prabhupada a lot of time. The frog in the well thinks that the world is just a little well, and so another frog comes and tries to explain, and then the ocean, size of ocean is big. How big? And eventually the frog in the ocean is imagining all that, he just burst. So how do we use Kupamanduka? Any idea? So all this, the frog in the ocean or frog in the well, he cannot understand the whole creation. He cannot understand the personality of Godhead by his little understanding. And there is also the Tandula Vrishchika. Tandula is rice, Vrishchika is like scorpion. So again, the similar concept of the rice, people, because the scorpion took birth from the rice, people think that the rice is responsible for the birth of scorpion, but it's not true. Actually, it is the scorpion the mother scorpion laid the eggs. That's how the scorpion has come in. So it is not the material nature which is responsible for everything. That the seed is giving is the father. It is not the material nature. There's interesting Shakha Chandra Nyaya. Like we can, Shakha is like a branch. You see the moon, Shakha Chandra moon. If you see the moon through the big, like a banyan tree or something, you can see sometime in the big trees, or some big trees here as well. You see the moon shining there. It feels like the moon is also part of the tree, but that's not. The moon is not a part of the tree. It's just you can be seeing from the tree, within the leaves, but it's not that the moon is part of the. Similarly, Lord here, when He comes in the material nature, is not one of us or one of the part of the material. He's not in it. And lots of other. I got 5 more minutes, so I was going to come to the conclusion. So what does the philosophers, after all this, what really is the conclusion of all this is, as Prabhupada has said in the purport about what's the real way of understanding the scriptures, Mahajano yena gata sapantha. The only way we can understand the essence of all scriptures is Mahajano Yena Gatasa Panta. Tarko Pratishtha Shutayo Vibhinna. The dry philosophical arguments cannot establish the variegated Vibhinna, Shutayo Vibhinna, the variegated nature of the scriptures. Yeah? And Nasa Rishi, but what happens? Nasa Rishi Yasham Matam na Bhinnam. A Rishi cannot be a Rishi unless they have their own philosophy, own logic. And then it goes to the next. And Dharmasya Tattvam. Dharmasya Tattvam. Na Bhinnam. Vihitam. Yeah. Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam. Mahajano Yena Gata Sapranta. So, the Dharmasya Tattvam, the Tattva, the logic, the truth, absolute truth of the scriptures cannot be understood because that's within the heart of the great souls, Mahajano Yena Gata Sapranta. And we have to just learn the philosophy in the disciplic succession. So we are quite blessed to receive this knowledge, and by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, traveling all the way from the Radha Damodar to the west. And I will finish with another interesting verse by Sridhar Swami. He says, Tapantu tapai. Tapantu tapai. You can perform any kind of austerity. You can just sit within the fire ring and you can do whatever type, stay hungry, stand on one leg, whatever you do. Yeah? Tapantu tapai. Prapatantu parvatad. Throw yourself from the mountain top. You can do that. Yeah? Atantu tirthani, you can go to various places, visit different holy places, do the pilgrimage. Yeah? Atantu tirthani, pathantu chagamam, agamam, pathantu, you can study the scriptures as much as you like, all the agamas and brahmanas and Upanishads, everything. And yajantu yager, perform unlimited yagyas. Yajantu yager, perform. So yajantu is like a direct, do it. Probably Sanskrit students would already know. Yajantu yajer, do it. Vivadhantu ader, you can go into unlimited arguments and discussions and counter arguments and all that. Yeah, but harim vina naiva mritim taranti. Harim vina naiva mritim taranti. Without the mercy of the Lord, there is no way you can cross this ocean of material miseries and nations. So it is only by the grace of the Lord, and we receive the grace of the Lord by tadvini pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshantite jnanam jnanena tattvadarshana. So yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado. So only by the process of surrendering unto the spiritual master, we can, in the disciple succession, we can achieve this knowledge. Hare Krishna. Sorry about that. Yes.
And is the sixth and is the sixth one the one that Shankaracharya?
Oh yes, the sixth one is. So Prabhupada explained that Ashtavakra is basically Mayavad, and Shankaracharya. So Vedanta was given by Srila Vyasadeva, but then Shankaracharya came up with his own idea of that, what that Vedanta means, and he brings in all the impersonalism into it. Yeah.
So, just to clarify that point, then the original Vedanta from Vyasadeva is the correct one.
Yes.
But Shankaracharya, his commentary then became the most famous, and then he interpreted it with the Mayavadi. But the original one is the correct one?
Yes, original Vedanta is correct. Yes. Shankaracharya presented is because we know the Shankaracharya also like a hidden Buddhism. So at the time to defeat the Buddhists, he brings a little bit. Makes Shankaracharya's followers actually twisted it even more than what he would have initially thought presented.
So just to double clarify, in the original 6 philosophies before Shankaracharya, is Vedanta the correct one?
Yes.
Vedanta.
So Srila Prabhupada has mentioned at few places, and probably I don't know, someone can give light, that when he says 6 philosophies, he's says the sixth is Ashtavakra, who was at the time of, it's a very interesting sage at the time of Janaka Maharaj. Janaka, like Ashtavakra was at the time of Janaka. Actually, he was a very interesting character. He was in the womb of his mother, and his father was reciting some slokas or some hymns. And he says from the womb, you're not correctly reciting it, it's wrong. And the father then curses the child, that how dare you say, correct your father. And that's how he became Ashtavakra. It's like 8 bent form. He comes out, and then later on there are other stories. Ashtavakra. But other places, Prabhupada is mostly, the philosophy which is normally mentioned is the Vedanta is the 6th one. Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Here's my question. It relates to what Adi Guru Prabhu was saying. So we look at our 4 Sampradayas, we have Shuddha Dvaita, Shuddha Advaita, Dvaita Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and we have Chincha Veda Veda. Can we say that all those systems are all expressions of the Vedanta?
Vedanta.
And then the Chincha Veda Veda is the best expression of Vedanta. Is that the correct way to look at it?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. They're all Vedanta because they're all theistic. You can maybe expand on why it is. Yes.
Thank you for the nice class, Prabhu. I just had a quick question. So, in the purport, it speaks a lot about mental speculators, and it says the reason for that is that the mind is material, and thus knowledge presented through the mind can never be perfect. So, I was just wondering, sometimes according to our level, when we read the scriptures, we also try to understand it based with our minds. So, how can we make sure then we ourselves not become mental speculators by, adding our own observations, experience, and understanding to it?
Yes, I think what you're saying is, as said in the purport, we should not be mental speculators. But then if we're reading, how do we, because we will obviously bring our own mind and intellect to understand it. Should we do that or not? Is that your question?
Or how can we avoid becoming mental
how can we avoid? Yes, I think we will have sorry, man. How to protect yourself? I think my understanding is as we go on, and every time I read Bhagavad Gita verse and I hear again and again, I get corrected every time. So I don't think we can avoid our conditioning is going to be there, but as we hear more and more, and the process is like Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. We hear, we contemplate, and we try to apply that knowledge in our life. Nididhyasanam, then it's more stable. But I don't know if Maharaj can give the right answer, what the right answer, but I think it will mature as we Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Yeah. So your consciousness within the heart gets purified. Right? Yes, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to understand when you're saying that Shankaracharya's philosophy is covered Buddhism. Can yourself or anyone here explain how that is? I've never properly understood it myself.
Never properly understood. Yeah. How the Shankaracharya philosophy is Buddhism. So we have to understand Buddhism is like voidism. So one is saying everything is zero. Other is saying is everything is one. So Buddhist says it's all zero. Nothing comes from no one. They're not going anywhere. I don't know what they're saying. And Shankaracharya then says everyone is one, everything is one. So which is also in a way because you're negating the authority of the Supreme Lord and his. So I don't know. Maybe it's better. I don't know what's the right answer. Right. 1 and 0, 1.
Does is it takes everyone down, take God down, take everything down. It's all zero, so there's no difference now. And what Mayavad does is it takes everyone up. Everyone's God.
Oh,
But
yeah.
ultimately, the net result is the same. That you've annihilated the distinction.
Distinction. That's the whole idea. It's interesting. All the Shankaracharya's disciples or followers, they just go into the same arguments. I've actually had some interaction with someone, and they all sing Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudamate. Samprapte sannihite kale, nahi nahi rakshati dukhan karanam. They all read every day that with this, the grammatical knowledge and all this of Sanskrit is not going to help you in the end. Sannihite samkale, samprapte. So you say at the end of the time when the death comes, none of this knowledge will help you. Only the chanting of the Lord's name will help you. Govinda's name. But they still do it. It's quite amazing.
Thank you for the class. So what's the purpose of what's the hidden motive of the Lord when He granted such philosophies to be propagated? And is there any value actually in these philosophies to help people who are on a certain mental platform to come to Krishna? Does that happen, or do they just get stuck or something?
I mean, Shankaracharya's philosophy was what we learned is because Buddhism actually was quite prominent. It spread not only in the Bihar, I mean the eastern side, but also came all the way down south and so many places. Buddhism was so prominent. Buddhism rejects Vedas, so it's atheistic. So the only benefit was when Shankaracharya came was he has to bring the Vedas, the scriptures back. So he kind of, the situation was so bad actually, we hear that. And the Buddhism is actually covering the whole understanding as Maharaj was saying, zero. But Shankaracharya, because people can only be lifted so much. They in one attempt, the Shankaracharya first re-establishes the importance of Vedas, reading Vedas. But he again, because it was probably what we hear is too difficult for people in the Buddhist mindset to then also accept the supremacy of the Lord, he established the Veda. That was the only benefit. So for the devotees, is there any advantage of hearing all that? We got pretty much lots of Bhagavatam and hearing and reading from Srila Prabhupada. I don't know whether it helps anyone. We don't need to. We have better now. Because at the time, Shankaracharya was important. But now after that, we hear the Ramanujacharya, the Madhvacharya, all the devotees line coming up. So we don't need to go back to something that was only for a situation. It was an adjustment.
Yeah, it's just I read somewhere that in one of the books that Krishna told Lord Shiva, you create this Mayavadi philosophy, and now you cover people with this so that you protect devotional service. So why does it have to be protected? Why is it a secret?
So Buddha is also incarnation of the Lord.
Yeah.
So why does he come? Because what happened is all these people were karma kanda. The karma mimamsa actually said that the people who were followers of the karma mimamsa, they were engaging in the horrible killing of the animals and all that, and they were just misinterpreting all the Vedic injunctions, scriptures. So the Lord appears as Buddha to then stop all that, and then Lord gives direction to Lord Shiva to come and establish this. So this is all. Sorry. Prayojan Prabhu.
Sankaracharya had two purposes.
Yeah.
One was to bewilder the demons, and the other one was to reintroduce the Vedas back. Reintroduce the Vedas. Yeah, two purposes.
Two purposes. One is to
bewilder the demons.
Bewilder the demons, the Buddhists.
And reintroduce the Vedas again.
And bring back the
With this Mayavad philosophy. Because like Prabhu said in his class, in his quotation, Shankaracharya just glorify Krishna, but demons can't accept it.
Prayojan Prabhu.
Can you clarify the position of Patanjali because it's understood that also he did his own sutras based on a yoga meditation. He does. I have some confusion about Patanjali's position in all this. That he does accept there is a supreme.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you clarify on that Patanjali's?
Yes.
Position.
So Patanjali is also, so in the Patanjali yoga, there are actually, it's explained that two types of samadhis, nirbija or sabija. Nirbija is most of the people follow, which is the another way of, impersonalism merging into the Brahman. Or so they don't understand the other aspect of sabija, which is all mostly brought by the Vedanta Sutras. So the yoga from the Patanjali, Srila Prabhupada rejects it completely in many places, because the way this is presented, Ishvara Pranidhana, the Va means or. We can go through the whole list. There are many ways of getting liberation. And the other aspect of Patanjali is all about the mind. And as it says, with the mind you can go beyond the mind, something like that. So it is for their ultimate objective is to attain that samadhi, and it has nothing to do with the Supreme Lord. If you want to take shelter of the Lord, maybe it will help you a little bit. There are different tools. For them, it's just another tool. There's no importance of the Lord, in a sense. It's not about. So our understanding is not only that we surrender to the Lord before we start the purification process, but after also. Is the means and the end for devotee is the same. Chanting, as a Prabhupada, someone asked Prabhupada, why are we chanting? Why are you chanting? What's the purpose? So what will you gain after chanting? Srila Prabhupada says, chant and chant more. So our means and the end is the same. But for them, the means is do whatever means you want to follow, and in the end you become liberated. For their liberation is nothing to do with the service to the Lord. That's how it was rejected.
But just one last point is that it's not that Shankaracharya invented Mayavad philosophy. These material philosophies, they exist with the creation. They're all eternal. And
yes,
like that.
Yes. That's why Ashtavakra was actually many ages before Shankaracharya. And Srila Prabhupada mentioned Ashtavakra was all Mayavad philosophy.
Just a point about why did Krishna have to protect the Vedas, protect the devotional service? One answer is Krishna's purchased by devotional service. So he creates these other philosophies to make sure that insincere people don't engage in devotional service to him. So devotional service is only for sincere people. So he has to protect it. That way, keeping it hidden. At the same time, of course, he wants everyone to take it, but they have to be qualified. So that's one reason. That's what back in Coco was saying. She was asking why protect it?
Yeah.
To keep unauthorized people away.
Yeah. Other aspect I was thinking is when these intellectuals, process, they are very, fine brains, but they are by themselves. They don't have a support system. When we are following, I have some pastime as well, when the devotees are following the Parampara starting from the Supreme Lord takes the guarantee of that. Means you will not fail. If we follow the process, we will not fail. Examples. Srila Vyasadeva, when he was, despondent, he was confused. Narada Muni appears. And so Lord makes the arrangement. There's the pastime of Lord Brahma. Also, when he was questioned by the Kumara, Sanat Kumar asked him a question as to, it seems like the mind and the senses are quite entangled in each other, so mind is in the senses and the sense objects, and the enjoyment senses are in the minds. How do we get rid of this? How do we break this relationship with the mind and the senses? Now Bhagavatam explained that the Lord Brahma was, he's in charge of mode of creation. So he said, I don't know how to answer this question. So he praised, and then Hamsa Avatar, the swan comes, the Lord Swan comes, and he actually dissipates that that ignorance, and he explains to the four Kumaras. And there are other, actually got a few, forgetting, but there are other situations as well, like how did Rupa Goswami understand what's in the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Because the devotee, the Lord bestows the mercy on the devotee understand what the heart of the Lord is. I'm forgetting now a few examples where Lord has actually, like Vidyabhushan, Balla Vidyabhushan, about Govinda Bhashya. He was challenged to give the commentary within a very short time, and he prayed to the Lord. And the Govinda, he says that the Bhashya was written by Govinda, and Srila Prabhupada also says all the purports, everything was, the Lord directly spoke to him. So it's written there. So the Lord, not only when he gives the knowledge and we take the knowledge, he also then protects that knowledge. And also the protection comes in so many ways. Is that making sense? Hare Krishna, thank you. Srimad Bhagavata Puran ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama.